Okay, think we are doing okay here. Having a little bit of a technical snafu-zaroo. Let me go ahead and take this thing off. Hello, fellow Sublime Text Fanatics. Welcome to a live stream. Apologies for being distracted trying to get this thing off so it doesn't drive us crazy during the stream, and for not having a stream for the last couple of weeks. Been having some dental issues. I had a crown that came off way back at the beginning of August, and when I went in to see about them fixing it, they decided instead of fixing that, I needed a root canal in the adjacent tooth. And then once that was all done, they decided I needed a root canal in a different tooth. And those are the sorts of things, just always happen to be happening right around stream time. Not a fun time to want to be talking and doing, well, much of anything really. So we've sort of been slacking it up a little bit. But we are back now, and we will be working tonight on a little package I have been working on called that I'm calling SubliNet. Um, and yeah, so that is the plan, such as it is. I have a few things I'd like to do. There's some other issues that I am having network related, but we can get into that when the stream comes. And for some reason, this does not seem to be doing anything particularly nice. But we'll just leave that for a second and see. Because I think there's something a little untoward happening over on the old MacBook there. I was fiddling around with some network settings, and I think I made it angry. And just before we jump in, let me just click a couple of buttons here, like so. Someone is actually talking to me on the Discord right now. What we will leave that be for the time being, and I shall press the button, which hopefully will do the thing that we want, because Obs was being a bit of a butthead earlier too. Hello, fellow Sublime Text Fanatics. OdatNurd here. Welcome back to the Sublime Text live streams after a little bit of a hiatus due to some dental issues and not really feeling like talking, being public, doing anything other than slouching on the couch playing Zelda on a Switch. You know how that goes. I have been doing a bunch of stuff behind the scenes, been extra active on the Discord and such, but we haven't been getting onto our live streams. And hopefully, this will be the end of the dental issues for the end of the year, because if anything else happens, I got to pay for it out of pocket. So something is going to get real exciting starting New Year's Day. But nevertheless, we are ready to rock and roll on stream. And the thing we are working on tonight is this package called SubliNet. Which is something that allows us to take data from one copy of Sublime and shoot it over to another. For example, if I was to copy this text, I might assume that is copied, and then I could paste it like so. Now I'm going to switch my mouse over to my Windows computer and select some text. And when I press copy over here on this, which is a laptop just to my left, we see that panel pop up. It's not quite doing what it's supposed to do, but if I was to press Control V on this keyboard, I have scooted the clipboard from the left computer, my Windows computer, over here onto this one. And this could possibly be the most complicated way to pull something like this off, uh, but it's something I like because I have the computer right to my left, boop, right there, Windows laptop. That is my work computer. Right here in front of me is my Linux desktop computer, which is a work computer as well, and my home computer as well. I have right there where you can't see it a MacBook that is running stuff. That one, that computer there, that blue laptop is also a Windows machine running Sublime. And I have one in the uh, living room as well on my laptop, and there's my Chromebook. I'm working on all of these things, and sometimes I am working on something and I can see over on the Windows computer what I'm doing, stuff I'm like maybe checking mail and doing something on a web page there and working in Sublime, and then I'm working on something here, and there's something I'd like to copy over from there to here, and that's a bit of a but. Or I'm working on some code in Linux and in Windows simultaneously, and I fix a little bug, and then I want to scoot it over the other way, and that requires me to save a file and such. Now, I don't use a conventional KVM type situation for this because that laptop and this computer share monitors. So in order to do that, I would constantly have to be flipping the monitor input as well. Or when I move my mouse to the left, it'll just appear on a monitor that's not visible. And then you got to keep moving it to the left to get to the right place. It's not a great situation. So I came up with the idea of this package, not this code here, which is something that we were working on in the Discord right before we went live. But uh, what it does is interconnects multiple copies of Sublime. Now, unfortunately for me, I was fiddling with the network setup on the laptop, and as a result, I'm now getting these types of messages, which is not something I am particularly interested in. I'm not entirely sure why, because it's not actively running over there anymore. So one thing we might want to do is something like this, because maybe there's still a process running in the background. Hard to say. It figures not. There'd be a plugin host there, wouldn't there? What we could do is maybe this. That's not going to do what I want. It requires the whole word. Okay. Let's see if that stops anything. Otherwise, I'm not entirely sure what's broadcasting here. Let's just look over here in the Discord for just a second. Some sneaky way to add an indicator to a file name in the browser. Oh. Generic pointer is saying maybe we can have something to modify the sidebar. I'm pretty sure that has been asked for and being rejected as being too performance intensive. I think a discussion about that was the thing that made Tito go off the deep end. And we won't say that part, but the sidebar APIs in general, that is. All right, so has that particularly solved my problem here? Let's see. There's a couple of things I'd like to fix. This particular plugin here, someone, Peter Crystal, was asking in the Discord about being able to take the value of the file path variable. No, still no, huh? Well, let's see if it goes one more time. Otherwise, I might just have to do a little bit of short circuiting here. Because there should not be anything spitting traffic out on that thing. There's no software running over there. Actually, let's give a little bit of a check here. Let's see. That was another one coming in, wasn't it? Nothing ever goes right. IANA port 4377. Did I accidentally pick a bad port? Maybe I should choose 50,000. That'll solve the problem. Oh, wow, that is totally uncool. There can't be an assignment for it way up in that range, can there? I don't think there can. Maybe there is. Let's search for it. 4377. The Cambridge Pixel SPX server. I have a feeling that that's not something that I currently have running on my MacBook. That is a really irritating turn of events. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie about that one. That is a bit of a butt. I may have to actually, one thing I can do is close that. We could sort of run through a little bit of some stuff here. That is running there, that is running there. So what if, where is the place to do something like this? I think it's in transport, receive a discovery. We want something like this. And we'll say panel equals true. Now, unfortunately, one of the things that I have that's sort of going a little pear-shaped here is I'm using an enum. So let's see, this is going to show us all of the broadcasts for this. So let's move that up. What machine is IP address 40 is the question. Because whatever it's doing, it's making me very unhappy. Okay, that's just extra irritating. Doesn't log those in the console, does it? Let's double check. That's this machine broadcasting out on an incorrect IP address? Huh. All right then. Well, that makes life easier. We don't want to connect to, go away. We don't want to connect to message IP. We want to connect to that for the time being. We'll quit and restart. That should resolve the issue, I think. Now it is accepting and connected. We can skip back over that operation later. We do not want to be logging discoveries because that will make you silently crazy. So it's receiving a discovery from 40, and let's not log those to the panel, let's say. It's not having this problem earlier today, you know? Life is complicated. So let's see that running. Oh, I gotta quit and restart that, don't I? Just to make sure. There's an issue with reloading. Dart comes from that, and it has the same IP address. And the next discovery that pings out here, 40, coming from. I know why that's happening. Oh. All right. Well, that is something that was actually intended to be fixed in this stream. So maybe we can just actually get on with the business at hand, such as it is. That machine is running on a VPN connection, and that its IP address changed because it rebooted over the weekend. That's why it's going all weird. Hello, Ashwin. Just going mildly crazy. So this actually was something that doesn't technically need to change, but we will change it for just now. Now I keep getting distracted by that box popping up. So one issue that I'm having is we have this net event action that is all of the different network events that could be triggered by this for use in the logging. And this is an enum, and each one of these values ends up being an instance of this particular class. But when you use automatic package reloader, it reloads this file a bunch of times. And every time it does, it creates a new version of the class. So each one of the classes that's using this essentially ends up with their own unique instances and nothing lines up. So using automatic package reloader with this is a real bear for getting things to work the way that you want it to. But there are a few things that we like to do here. So if you're just joining the stream now, hello, welcome. We are working on a package called SubliNet, which is something that I knocked up and is possibly the most complicated Sublime Text package possible for taking the clipboard from this laptop on my left and putting it over here on this computer right here without using some sort of external software, which of course some sort of clipboard manager would definitely work for that, or maybe some sort of software KVM, such as, for example, Synergy, which I had used for many years, but gave up when I got this new laptop because various reasons the older versions don't work right. In fact, I have a special script or a compiled C program I created whose job it is to run the Synergy server and then wait for it to crash and then start it again because it was so incredibly unstable. But I use Sublime everywhere and it seemed like a fun thing to do. So I created a package that internetworks things around. And very basically, what it actually does is has a multicast UDP broadcast out once every 30 seconds to advertise itself to other places on the network. And then anything that sees those broadcasts can try to connect out to it to be able to actually internetwork. So as many copies of Sublime as there are, that's how many of this there are running. So since that problem I was having was in fact the Windows computer and not the Mac, what I can do is wish that that was the case. That's not the right password. And start it up there to have an extra machine to run this on. And we'll see what happens. We want to add this route on that. And that's okay. So I think technically that'll do something. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and click Sublime over on the MacBook. So if you're unfamiliar with this sort of level of low-level networking, UDP or User Datagram Protocol is one of the protocols that sits on top of IP, the Internet Protocol. Oh, look at that. That totally works. And its job is to take packets of data and ship them out. And UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol, but you might refer to it as shoot. I had a really great joke there, and it left my head. The unreliable datagram protocol, because all it does is take some data and ship it off over the network, and that's it. So what with the state of networks and routers being what they are, there can be multiple computers on a network. Of course, there could be multiple ways to get to a particular system. The whole idea of the internet as it was conceived by DARPA way back in the day is the idea that if you have a computer here and a computer here and one straight wire that connects them together, if a bomb lands in the middle, those machines can't talk to each other. But if you have a computer here and a computer here, and then two more top and bottom, and this computer connects that way, then if something happens to this system up here, the traffic can route its way around. That's why those bits of hardware are called routers. And UDP just takes the packet and ships it out onto the network at large, which means possibly it never gets there if there's network congestion and it's considered to be not real interesting traffic. You might send an A in one packet and a B in the next and find out that they arrive in the wrong order because maybe each one of them takes a different route to get there and one is faster than the other. Maybe you send out A and send it to one part of the network and it doesn't get a response and it just decides to go ahead and send it the other way, thinking that maybe that system is broken. And then you get two copies of it at the other end actually it was just slow. So UDP is very unreliable. If you want something to be reliable, then you need something that acknowledges that you presented a packet, and then you can make sure that everything is coming in order and everything has to be buffered. So that you have to make sure that you collect all of the data and put it in the correct order in case it comes out of order, throw away any duplicates. That's what TCP is for. So for our discovery mechanism, we ship out UDP messages because they just go out, they can be broadcast to everybody, and then that can be a signal that you want to make a more reliable connection in, which has the benefit of I just started Sublime on that computer and it started working here because the discovery is enough, that UDP broadcast is enough to know, hey, I'm totally a thing that exists here, whereas otherwise you'd have to configure things. The downside to UDP, it's very fast. It's very fast because it doesn't really do any sort of error checking at all. So we want to have the best of both worlds there. And Ashwin's saying, I am completely lost when it comes to network programming. Not being a CS student, I have never taken a formal course on it. Yes, it can be a little bit of a tricky thing, such as it is. Because I have a little bit of a part of the reason why I wanted to write this the way that I did is because I've only written 50% of this sort of stuff in Python before. Now at work, the software that we write is very heavily internetworked. There are 5 systems that are running as part of one cluster of machines, and not like a cloud type infrastructure. Literally, our software is made up of like a couple of dozen discrete pieces of software that are each responsible for doing a certain thing, like receiving stock data or shipping it off to something else, processing it, extracting cross-reference information, all that sort of stuff, logging things. So we have an IPC mechanism, an inter-process communication mechanism that we wrote and hand-tuned that is responsible for allowing all of these bits of software to connect to each other on the same machine across network boundaries to other machines, and even scale out to different geographical sections of the world. And so I have a lot of experience in writing network code because of that, and also multi-threaded code because each one of those things has a ridiculous number of threads. For example, 4 of them off the top of my head just for networking. So back in 2018, for my Devember project, I actually wrote a remote build system. When there's videos, I was live streaming that one and then doing live devlogs on the channel. There's like a playlist if you'd like to go over that. Unfortunately, near the end of the Devember, I got the worst cold that I'd had in like 5 years or more. And as a result, I couldn't talk for a couple of days. So I kept working on things, but I was unable to keep recording videos. But in the purpose of that project was a server running in .NET on a Windows computer, and then me on Sublime here. And the idea is I'm working on C# code here in my copy of Sublime on Linux. When I press build, it makes a TCP connection to the Windows machine, negotiates back and forth, takes all of the files that it needs to from the local system, ships it over to there, runs the tools necessary over there to compile it, and then ships the result of that back to me. And in the same, the build output as the task is running would be captured and shipped back to me. And the proof of concept 100% worked. Unfortunately, right after that, I got taken off of working on some of the Windows stuff and got put on something else. So I never really had a chance to flesh it out more. But the network code from this is the Python version of the being able to send messages out. But what I didn't do was the server end. For Devember, what I was learning how to do was do network code in C#, where I had the server code. So part of the reason why this code is the shape is that it is because I boosted some of the stuff from the one and put it over here. But for the as a result of that, some of this stuff, for example, these bits here for being able to send messages, not the greatest. And this code is totally in a repository on the Stealthy and Hasty GitHub repository as well, if you're familiar with that or you search it up. I link it fairly often in the Discord. There's a SubliNet repository there that has this particular thing. And I shared the link on the Discord as well. So to test that this will work on macOS after I just did that thing, again, I'm going to copy this line of text and paste it like this, so we can see that is exactly that text. Now I'm going to come over here and type lorem, expand out the lorem, and then select everything and copy it. And we see this say it updated the clipboard with 446 characters from the machine with IP address 170. And now if I push paste over here, this is the lorem ipsum text from macOS shipped over here. So for the purposes of what I want this to do, it works for my use case, but it is still a little bit crude. And one of the things is probably don't need to I'm popping up the panel there every time text is coming in. That seems like a good idea because probably it would be distracting and disorienting if it popped up while you were working all the time, although it does actually work that way. And if you watch the earlier part of the stream, you saw me going crazy before I realized this troublemaking Windows machine over here is broadcasting a stupid IP address, which is something we're hopefully going to fix. But if you're actually working on that machine and you copy text and it pops up here to say, that's less worrisome. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. So let us look at the README because I have a few things down here. And this README also describes some of this stuff. So the first item here is the one that's kicking us in the butt, which is allow for configuration of what network interface to use on multi-home machines. And I don't know. Actually, that might work. On this machine, I have two network devices. I have this one, which is the 172.36 network and is my home network. And I have this 172.18.5 network, which is the work network. And so this one is connected to a physical cable, and this one's connected to a USB dongle on the back of the system to add an extra network interface because this computer only had the one. So anything that goes over this traffic, this one talks to my home network, this one talks to the work network. This is a pretty common thing, I think, especially nowadays, perhaps less so a decade ago. But if we look at the routing table, and if you're unfamiliar with networking, this might not make a ton of sense, but the routing table is what tells the network system how to transmit traffic from one place to another. So the network knows, because of the routes that I put in, that anything on the 172.36.1 subnet, which is my home network, should be shipped across interface ETH0, which is the home interface. And anything that wants to talk to 172.18.5 should talk to ETH1, which is that second interface right here, the one that talks to the work network. And this one is a route for talking to localhost, which is actually the loopback host. This one is always IP address that. This is one of those things that I think is slightly different on Linux than on on Windows anyway. It's been a while since I actually checked. It's actually, the loopback interface is actually a fake interface so that it behaves just like everything else. And a destination of 0.0.0.0 is what you would refer to as the everything else. So if I try to talk to that laptop over there, it's a 172.36 address. The network knows it needs to ship the information across ETH0. ETH0 knows that the default gateway, I'm not sure if it shows it in here, the gateway for that is the router that sits up there on that shelf behind me. So the traffic will go out to that router and then it can be delivered to the appropriate thing. If I want to talk to that system over there, I would talk to it on one of these IP addresses that takes the data over ETH1 instead, which talks to a duplicate of that router that's sitting behind that one, and then it gets distributed to those. This one with the gateway of 172.361.1 is any other machine that I might possibly want to talk to. It knows to ship it over ETH0, which sends it up to the router, and then the router knows that because it's not one of these, it must be for the internet at large, and that's what allows it to escape into the wild, right? An issue, and the reason that I wanted to do this is exactly the issue I'm having over here on this computer right now, is what happens if you have more than one of these network interfaces here. You have to talk over one of them, but which one do you actually pick? And it's choosing the right one, but it's broadcasting the wrong information, if you will. And that will probably be a little bit more clear when it comes to looking at the actual code for this. Because when we send UDP out, multicast UDP in this case, but that's just sort of an extra sprinkling of awesomeness on top of UDP, such as it is. UDP is um, a connectionless protocol. Yeah, user datagram protocol. It's a protocol. I wasn't quite sure if that was a good terminology. UDP as a network technology is equivalent to writing your note on a piece of paper, like a little post-it note, putting it in a bottle, and throwing it in the ocean. The post-it note's pretty small. You have a very limited amount of information. Once it gets to the ocean, will it eventually get to where you want? You hope so, but there's no way for you to know. If you had a note that was too long, then you probably have to write something on two pieces of paper and then put them in two separate bottles and throw both bottles in the ocean. Will both of them arrive? Hope so. Will the person that eventually finds them take them out of the water and look at them in the correct order? Hope so, but you have absolutely no guarantee with UDP. TCP, on the other hand, the transmission control protocol, as the name suggests, is literally for transmitting data to something. It's very connection oriented. That's where the idea of connecting to a host is. You have a very specific IP address in mind. You have a very specific port in mind. You initiate a connection to that and it sends a request off. The other computer has to be listening on that port and then say, yes, I will talk to you. And then what goes on behind the scenes down in the layer of the kernel of your operating system is all sorts of checks and balances to make sure that when you put some data on the network device, that it will be buffered, transmitted away. The other side acknowledges that it received it or says, I didn't receive it, send it again, which is why TCP has to have buffers. It has to be able to hold on to the data until it can verify that it went somewhere. UDP is unbuffered. You throw it into the network at large and it goes or it doesn't. There's no way to send a large message other than sending multiple packets. You don't know if they're going to arrive. You don't know if they're going to be in the right order. You don't even know if they're all going to arrive one by one because it's possible for the network to duplicate them as well. But probably went off on a slight ramble there. The point of all of this operation is for our system here, we want to be able to broadcast out to say, hey, I'm here and I'm listening on port 4377. So if you'd like to talk to me, you can connect to me. And that way, all of the systems that run this don't have to have any sort of configuration file that tells you exactly where they are. I can start up Sublime on a brand new system, install this package, and it would immediately start talking to these machines here without having to do any work whatsoever, which I think is also the basis of the Bonjour protocol, or Bonjour from Apple came up with that. I think it's a discovery system, way more advanced than what we're doing here. In order to transmit that out, it's using multicast, and it can very easily just multicast out to the universe at large. If there's only the one interface, it'll send it over the one. If there's two, it'll probably go over both of them. If there's three, it'll go over all three. But it needs to transmit an IP address for where it's listening. And right now, it's doing that by checking what route is associated with this. What is the default route? If you just tried to talk to something, how would you talk out? And for this system, that is correct. For this system over here, It's wrong because it's connected to a VPN adapter that connects me to my work network and my parent company in another province. And all of my internet traffic, even general internet browsing, goes over the VPN. So although it does have a local network device, it also has a VPN network device as well. The network VPN device has the default route. So I see its broadcast, but what it's broadcasting is an IP address that's garbage. Um, so that's why that's causing a problem. And the little change that I made here was to connect back to the place where the broadcast came from and not to the place where it's actually coming from, such as it is. So in order to solve that particular problem, we need to be able to configure what network interface this thing should actually be using. Because right now, as I said, it's just figuring on the default. That information is configured up here. This is the multicast group that it's talking on. This is the port that it wants to transmit out. This is how often in seconds it does it, which is every 30 seconds. And this is a time to live. UDP, such as it is the idea of you have a general destination in mind. You throw it and you walk away. Maybe it gets there, maybe it doesn't. UDP also has the idea of UDP Broadcast, and there's normally a broadcast address, and I believe that would be listed in here as well. The broadcast address for this network is this. So if you were to transmit a UDP packet to this address, it would be delivered not to everybody on the whole network. If there were 254 computers besides this one on the network, all 254 of them would receive that traffic, which is good for some things. I believe the Unix wall command might do something like that, sending out a message to everybody. On a large network that's a lot of networks connected together, maybe not the greatest idea, because if you don't have a specific target in mind, does it really need to go to everybody? There's a UDP concept called multicast, and the idea of multicast is you send a message to a specific IP address and it gets as far as the router and then effectively stops, unless some other system on the network joins the group. It sends a message that says, I would like to receive traffic on this multicast group. And when you do that, then the network knows that whenever the data goes up, it can be shipped to the appropriate place. So that's sort of an oversimplification of how it works. Basically, it's like a targeted broadcast, if you will. And most streaming services like, say, Twitch and such, or voice over IP applications, even YouTube as well, I would imagine, is actually using a UDP protocol for shipping the data out. And it does that specifically for a couple of reasons. One is it's fast, it's really fast. Unlike TCP, it doesn't have any buffer. You can just throw packets out there and away they go. You don't have to wait to see if the other side got them. Who cares? There's 4,000 kilobits of information. Sorry, almost 5,000 kilobits of information a second flowing out of my system right now. So you can watch me ramble about this topic and not actually do any coding. So if one of those messages gets lost, or two in the middle duplicate themselves or come out of order, who cares? By the time you notice it, you're already farther down the line. And that also allows better network control, because the actual data is only distributed to people that are interested in looking at it in the first place. So what we need here realistically is configuration in general, because I don't have any. I just have this stuff hard coded. By the way, multicast time to live is how many hops on the network a multicast broadcast will go before it stops. So one means this computer sends it to the router. The router doesn't transmit that broadcast on. It just stays there. You could set this to say 2, and then this router would decrement the number by 1 and ship it out to all routers that it knows about, and then it would stop at those routers. Or you can set it to 255 and it would just flow all the way out. All else being equal, the internet at large tries to squash multicast data where possible. So you realistically, you need a lot of network setup to get a TTL of more than one anyhow. But for the purposes of this, the idea is everything's going to be running on the same internal LAN. It doesn't need to be more than one anyhow. Still nice to configure it, and these are all hard coded. So I guess it's enough time blathering on about stuff. I'm just sort of excited that I can now be talking now and I don't have weird gum and lip pain right there. I had quite the little lump there that made talking unfortunate, eating, all sorts of things. I maintain the idea that getting a root canal and then going back the next day and having a hygienist jab you in the gums is definitely not a good idea. I mean, I recommend you see a a hygienist regularly, but maybe not on the day after your jaw has been brutally assaulted by a root canal. So I got a lot of code here, a lot of code, and this is actually a threaded type operation as well. Actually, what we're gonna do is steal some code. Whoops. As you might expect from this thing over here. And we're going to throw this in because I really like this particular configuration scheme. And apparently some other people do too. I find it a nice balance on caching the thing around and making sure that everything is going to work the way we expect it to. So would this be part of the core? I think it would. Part of the core in this one too, right? Yes. So we're going to need a couple of things. We're going to need this for one. Every time I copy text, I see something pop up over there. It's a nice indication that it's actually working. Like so. So we would say this to SubliNet setting. Get a and that would also need to be, I probably should have did all of those at once, huh? Like so. Okay, and then we want to throw something like yaw in. And yeah, in this. Let's do it first thing. So we're going to need a few settings for this. I guess the settings would be sublinet.sublime settings, right? Okay, so, okay. Broadcast time defaults to 30 seconds. Multicast group would default to 224.1.1.1. Incidentally, there's a special set of IP addresses that are set aside for IP multicasting. So you can't use any sort of arbitrary IP address. There's a special, I think there's only, when it comes to IPv6, not 100% sure. You can definitely multicast on it, and it's a shorter version of an address. There are some addresses set aside for multicasting. Generally, anything in the 224 address range, subnet range is cool for this sort of thing, give or take. But there's no guarantee, so it's always a good idea to. Maybe we fix that. I think we're deciding that single quotes are where it's at on this operation. Always a good idea to configure this sort of thing as a result. Let me just go ahead and right on. Okay, so. Oh yeah, that's right. We have the broadcast time, the multicast group. Maybe we might call this discovery group. Discovery port. Whoops. Oh, come on, man. Whoops. Wow. I wish I could be consistent about that. And there's nothing really special about that particular port. I just sort of randomly plucked one. It can be any port you like as long as everybody knows what it is. So that's why the discovery port needs to be a well-known port. The idea of being 100% configurationless is 99% possible. Clearly, this is configurationless and it works, but it's possible that you might need to tweak it. But at least you can share the settings all over everywhere, and you don't need to have a list of machines that most definitely you want to talk to or not. So we'll group those out maybe. No, we won't do that. So there's the broadcast time. How long between broadcasts? And another thing to note about this is one of the things that you need to do with a TCP connection when you make one out to a server is detect when it's broken, obviously, but maybe you need to connect again, right? If you're connected to Discord and your connection is broken, it has to connect again because you presumably want to keep talking, unless you quit the application. Normally you do that on some sort of timeout, but for our purposes here, that doesn't happen. If a connection gets broken, we just throw it away, and who cares? Because if you don't have a configured list of who you're supposed to talk to, it's not a good idea to try to connect back to them if the connection fails, because maybe the connection fails because that copy of Sublime is quit now. And in that case, you don't want it to sit forever trying to talk to a thing that it's never going to be able to talk to. But since it sends out a broadcast on a regular interval and the response to the broadcast is to connect to the other machine, then by definition, right now this broadcast time is also the maximum time between reconnects if a connection breaks and everything is still running. The other thing we need here is network interface. I'm not sure what the best name for this is. What we want is the IP address to that we want to use in our broadcast. Broadcast interface, broadcast IP. We'll call it that. And the default for that's going to be an empty string, I think. Yeah, that one right there. Technically, we could also have a configuration for what port we actually want to talk on. So maybe we configured that as well. Maybe we name this stream IP and stream port, and the port will be 4377. The way that this works is there's a type of message called an introduction message, like so, that gets broadcast once every 30 seconds, and it has information about the current user, their IP address, and port that they are currently listening for connections on, and then the host name for information purposes, the platform in case we care, version of the protocol that we're using, and that message goes out. So right now, what it's doing is it's listening on a particular multicast group and port, and when it creates the discovery message, it puts that multicast group and port in so that the other side talks back, which means that when it listens, it has to listen on the exact same port as this one so that at the other end knows. That's not strictly required. You could multicast out on one port and then advertise yourself on a different port if you wanted to. I don't know why you would want to, but if we're going to add configuration, you might as well, because you never know what sort of network infrastructure someone might have. So the idea of having something that's very easily configurable seems like a good idea. So that's going to set up this information. And we're going to want to say, wait, the core doesn't need to import from transport, I hope. Nope, good, because that would be bad. We're dealing with a lot of circular references in code today. From dot, this transport is in network, so it would be ..core import sn settings, right? Oh, and I got to change those too. That would have been unfortunate. There. And that should be that as well, so that it can pull that information out. Let us, oh, is that still logging from before? Well, this is a perfect example of what these things are actually transmitting out. Van Term is the computer to my left. It's the Vancouver computer assigned to Terrence Martin. Dart is my local machine, and TMAC is my Mac. So there's 3 different IP addresses. They broadcast their default route and the multicast host. And note, this machine, which we are talking to on a 172.36 address, is broadcasting that it's listening on this because this is what its default IP address is. And that's the result of this code right here that tries to make a connection to send a datagram to somewhere just to see which interface and which IP address is associated with the interface that is associated with the default route, which is what it would use if the value for this thing was empty. So I think that means this has to include that too, but we'll worry about that in just a minute. We're going to need a settings file, which we will save in resources. Really, you can't create multi things at the same time, huh? Let's go ahead and save that, and then say oops. Okay, so we actually loaded it, so now it's getting noticed. That's a little thing. Sometimes you have to kickstart it because it doesn't necessarily notice that files have been changed if you haven't loaded it first. So that exists now. So if we were to copy this, and again, the code itself has these items. Whoops. Defaulting to something. Wait, why is that angry? Oh, because that one should have been 2. Okay. The JSON file needs to have that. The code has default values for this that it applies, even though we put them in here, and that is just to guard, I think I've said before, in case this settings file wasn't here, something untoward happens, that anything that uses the settings code to get a known setting will always get some kind of value, so you don't get weird errors about none or not responding to things or something. How frequently in seconds we should send out a discovery message to let other instances know that we're running. Other hosts will connect to us when they receive our broadcast. And they're not already connected. Yeah, I temporarily have the glow effect turned off because it doesn't look right in this build. I tried to keep it on, but it was just a little bit too confusing. Ben said he has a fix for that, so hopefully that comes out soon because I really miss my glow, man. I didn't think that, and that's just something I put in there because I wanted to see, let's see what this glow does. And then I thought, if I'm going to make things glow, perhaps I want to have it glowing on functions and classes and plugins so that I can see where they start better. It didn't take long before I was like, this is actually pretty cool. So this is a twofold setting, how often we broadcast. So this also controls how long a reconnect might take. It's worth noting that a broadcast message, we're going to move these ones up. the broadcast messages, there's one transmitted out as soon as the network thread starts talking. It immediately, or as soon as it starts, it immediately transmits one out. And we can actually see that down here at the bottom of the file here. The time of the last broadcast is none. We start by getting the current time. This is the magic network code that's responsible for detecting when one of the connections has some data to read from or some data to send out. And then if the last broadcast is none, or it's been at least the appropriate time, send out a discovery packet. I suspect that this tick call should not happen here. I think it needs to happen here. That's probably cool. The idea behind this is as soon as the network thread starts, i.e. as soon as the package becomes installed and removed from the list, it immediately broadcasts out. And the thread is started when the plugin is loaded. So the theory is as soon as an instance of Sublime runs and the plugin host is ready, it'll broadcast out. The other hosts will see the broadcast and connect in. So there's no delay and everything just immediately works. The multicast discovery, okay. Oh shoot. Well, these said one of those things that's going to get us in trouble in package dev. We could provide hints for these though. Set the multicast IP address and port that is used to broadcast discovery messages that tell other instances of Sublime, running this package that we exist and are ready to connect. On some OSs, notably Mac OS, at least older versions, you may need to adjust your network routes to enable multicast traffic over some IP. Okay, and then this is how frequently in seconds those go out. And these last is, well, maybe we put these here. Maybe we do want the discovery at the top. We'll change this. Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll do that. The IP address and port to use for to listen for incoming connections on. The IP address is an empty string. The IP used for the default gateway, default route, I guess is probably a better way to say that. The idea of a default gateway is the place where all of your traffic goes by default if it doesn't have some other place to go, and the gateway is a network idea of if I wanted to send traffic to some other computer, what system can I send it to that knows how to direct it? And that's usually your router or your network switch that knows who's connected to it so that it knows how to route the traffic around. So the IP address support to listen to for incoming connections. If the IP address is an empty string, the IP used for the default IP address for the default route. Interface defined on the default route is used. You might need to set this, okay, on a multi-home machine, you may want to, you can configure this to control what network interface you're listening for connections on. The better way to do something like this, theoretically, is if it's empty, make one listening socket for all possible network interfaces. But that one's a little bit more complicated. So there's that. So I think that's probably cool. And it's getting reloaded when I do that, so that's good. We need to actually pull these values out. So Astron's asking, can it be made to work with paste from history of any connected computer? It's funny you say that because if I was to come over to this Windows computer, I have the button on the side of my mouse here allows me to swap what machine it's connected to between the Windows computer, the Linux computer, and my laptop in the other room. So I switch it to channel 2. I can talk to this one, and I copy some stuff here. Now, just to point this out here, if I push Control K, Control V, this is the history for things here: broadcast time, setting, etc., etc. Over here on this machine, I've just selected some text. I'm going to push copy. This one says it received 244 characters. Whoops, wrong key. This reload text that wasn't here a second ago is that text. It crammed it in. Keep in mind that the paste from history functionality only tracks clipboard actions that happen inside of Sublime. So you can't use this to select text from a browser, for example, without pasting it into Sublime and then copying it again. Although conceivably, there could be something that detects when it gets the focus, and then it could have an internal panel where it pastes text and then reruns the copy command to make sure that it gets shipped out or something along those lines. I guess it wouldn't have to do that. We could just get the clipboard text such as it is. But that does indeed happen. It does work with paste from history of any connected computer. One of my main use cases for something like this. What it doesn't do, but could do, is when it connects, it could spool its entire paste from history across to the other side, which in the simplest case could be doing exactly what it's doing now by just shipping multiple messages out. But we maybe want something a little bit more robust than that. Yeah. Okay, so whoops, switch that back to channel 1 so that it'll work on this computer. Whoops, pardon me. And what we need now is to modify this code so that instead of using these addresses, it uses the ones from here instead. So the only place this is used is there. This is one of those tricky situations where all of these configuration items are used by this network thread. So realistically, it only captures them at plugin load time. You can't modify them while it's running. So it's probably another to-do item here. So let's add, while I'm thinking of it, maybe we'll go a little something like this. That was the meaning of your question, access to the entire paste from history. Yeah, no, it doesn't do that yet, but that is something that it could definitely do. Network settings, and then we'll do this. I don't normally do this in one of these files because I don't really like the look of it. But we do want to say all settings in this group are only read at plugin startup time. So a restart of Sublime is needed if you change one of these settings. If you change, we'll do it that way, and then this all works out nice. And then we'll copy that. Okay. maybe we add that next, that particular item there. So what we got here, how frequently in seconds we send a discovery message, all good. So we have that here, and then we're going to come over here to the README and say something like detect changes in configuration and signal the network thread so that it can potentially update its network configuration on the fly. That would actually disrupt network communication. So potential downside to that, but also kind of want to have these things good. So we have that. Now, there's a couple of things going down here. Now we said that broadcast time is the first thing we want, and it's only used in 2 places. So we're only going to need this one once. Okay, so say whoops. That's not what I intended to do. Pardonnez-moi. Boop. Let's get back down there. One of the downsides of having multiple cursors, sometimes you do something a little bit crazy. So we create a discovery message, and SN setting. Let's quickly type this in: broadcast time, like so. And if we did that, then we can put that down here. Shoot, now what was I just saying there? I completely lost my train of thought by making sure that I did that correctly. We broadcast one of these messages, so we create it once and encode it into bytes and then just transmit it out because your IP address never changes. So one of the things that if this was changed is this message would have to be recreated. But also, in order to make this bit here, which we're going to be looking at in just a moment, when we need to make a particular socket that's a datagram socket, a UDP socket, using the UDP protocol, make sure it's not blocking, set various options, bind it so that it knows that it's talking on a particular multicast port. So if the port changed or the IP address changed that we're transmitting out to, then it would have to recreate this socket, and it needs to make a server socket, something to listen for incoming connections. And 2 of the options on this are the address that you want to listen for, which is currently just randomly picking one, and what port to listen on. So it would need to recreate that as well, which would cause we would just have to close these sockets and then recreate brand new ones, which isn't the worst thing in the world. So we have that set up now. So broadcast delay is coming out of that, which should work. As a matter of fact, let's do just a very simple something like broadcast delay is %d. Wait, is that how we're logging in this system? I can't remember now. I don't have any of those. No. Yeah, we're using that other method. That's what I thought. Okay. I have so many different versions of this log code. We'll add a little S on the end there, and then we'll throw broadcast delay. Then we'll definitely know if that's working or not. We're going to quit and restart Sublime. Oh. There we go. But did the network code load? No. Crap, I do have a little bit of a circular dependency here. That's uncool. Transport. How did this work? The core is loading from the network. Oh. Huh. That's a potentially unfortunate sequence of events right there. I'm just thinking what the best way to solve such a problem is, because whatever we do is going to have to come through core. If we put it in utils, core loads from utils. There has to be a reference to the log code, or sorry, the setting code here in the core, because the core is the place where the loaded method that gets called in plugin loaded is. Let's restart that and get a good clear look at, because that other problem should go away. We want to make sure that part's all cool. So it didn't load. Now, in find and load, find and load, find and load, call with frames. In SubliNet.py, it loaded init in source loaded core loaded network, network loaded core. But if core loaded lib, it would be done, right? No, it wouldn't. I might be overthinking this one a little bit. If the settings code was not in core and core had to import it in order to load, then core would still be loading when network tries to import stuff, and then it wouldn't work anyway. Although it's currently pulling it from there. The other way to do this would be to have utils also have a loaded method and make sure that that works too. Or put it in the top level of the plugin, but I don't really like that. I suppose we could try it and see. The log code is in here. Well, this core import log, no. It does load that though, so it wouldn't have to. This only loads utils because it needs to be able to set up log panels in every window, i.e., now that I created this new window, it should have something in it. I mean, it doesn't now because the plugin didn't load, but the onloaded should create a panel in this one that has the network logs in it, and that should copy one of the existing windows into place here, so that whenever you have any window open, it always has the full backlog of communications that have happened. So I guess what we probably want here, and I don't necessarily like it, is this really seems like something that should be in the core. But we can put it in utils instead. Put it at the top of utils. Why did I do that? That's not normally how I do that. But we put that there. We remove it from here, right? And then, well, I guess we don't need to go that far. Copy that. And remove these lines out because we're not going to need them. And then up here, And do we need an unloaded here? No, but we might as well add one if we're going to have one, right? And let's copy one of these. Don't need this line. Just need that. And then in here. Boop. Oops. Might do something like that. And then in the top level plugin, you might say utils.loaded. Load utils first, then load the core. Unload the core first. Utils.unloaded. I think. Oh. Shoot, did I double break it now? Maybe I just caused the same problem to happen to a different place. The new kind input in icon and definition pop-up looks actually cute. Yeah, it sort of struck me as a bit weird in some things, but it quickly grew on me as well, much like the other thing. I think that has worked. No? No, it did not. So, huh. Not entirely sure. Is this one of those situations you can resolve by just importing the utils and then calling like, oh wait, this should actually be utils, right? Maybe that's a problem. Yeah, cool. I mean, it didn't initialize anything, but that's okay. From source input. Why does strictly imports are a pain in the... Yeah. Did you censor that or did it do that on your behalf? Just curious. I have no problem with it. Uh, we use we don't use Discord at work, but we use Mattermost as a collaboration platform between team members and teams, which I think is because we can run a copy of it in-house, whereas for Discord you can't. And it has a very crude mechanism for figuring out if something is a swear or not. It uses regular expressions to match them, but it doesn't use the /b word end anchors. So you can't, for example, use the word association because it has a certain word in it that matches a regex. So by and large, even if you try to say something innocuous, it ends up looking far more ominous than you intended it to. But it's dumb enough that if you put it inside of a word inside of code blocks, it doesn't get censored. So I'm not entirely sure what the whole deal with that is. So that problem was resolved, and now the only problem is, for some reason, this doesn't work. Oh, I suppose I need to do that. Export the module as a whole. There we go. That's working. I'm not entirely pleased with that, but the broadcast delay is 30 seconds, so our configuration system totally works. Groovy cool. All right. So broadcast time, no longer a thing. Get rid of it. Multicast group is used for that. Oh, that's used all over everywhere. So that's unfortunate. So we're going to have to do this in bits and pieces. First, broadcast address. Let's shut that down. Let's do a little bit of that too. What the heck? This is the only place that is used, right? So we're going to need to create this. Oh, it triggers for cuts too, not just copies. We're going to need to put that here. And this is the discovery socket is a UDP socket, and you can send to any particular thing that you like. Pardon me. We're sending this message to a particular place. So we might change this so that and that both don't have those anymore. And then this would be SN setting something, and this would be SN setting something. And the somethings, it's not like I can remember this sort of business. The discovery group and the discovery port. We want those two things. Da-da-ba-ba. Oh, it's too long. No. Oh, just manually typed? Yeah. I try not to, swear on stream, but I imagine every now and then something probably slips out. So apologize if that is an issue, but I try not. I like to keep things family friendly. I say what to poop a lot. Hi, buddy. My dog is visiting me. Maybe you can see over my shoulder back there, there's a new standing desk in the closet that's normally you get to see all of my Lego has a curtain in front of it. I'm setting up a new video recording area where I can stand and do stuff, have a nicer background behind me. A lot of more work to do. I have some closet ring lights to LED strips to put around the edges and a few other bits and bobs that have to go. But fingers crossed, video quality will jump up as a result. Okay, that's one place where we use that. Where else are we using this? In the construction of making the discovery socket is the only other place. Absolutely perfect. And is this the only other place that the port is used as well? No, it's used there too. Maybe we do this one first. Yeah, so down there in the bind call. Whoop. What was I hovering on that made that happen? It's actually kind of neat. Do I use a sit stand desk? Generally, no, but that particular one is one. It's a motorized one, so it can go up and down, which I thought would be good for something like this, because I can be standing behind the desk, which makes it spacing a little bit nicer. I don't have to have a chair back there. I do tend to one of the when I'm planning stuff that I want to do, sometimes I'll go for like a walk, or I do a very long exercise walk every day, and then super long ones on Saturdays and Sundays on weekend days. I spend a lot of that time thinking about particular programming issues. I mean, in the general case, the way life has been going the last few months, there have been other things to think about, but because I find this sort of the mindless activity of just standing and walking, I go the same route every time, so I don't really need to concentrate on finding my way. I mean, I watch for traffic and stuff, but then I can sort of clear my mind and sort of think through in my head what steps do I want to take for this particular thing. And then as I'm thinking about it, sometimes I use a voice recorder to record what I'm doing, and that usually will cause me to think of wrinkles that I hadn't thought of before, and then I can go back again. Sometimes I just sort of wander around the house. If I have a particularly pernicious problem, I wander around with a fidget spinner and just sort of spin the fidget spinner in my hand, or I got a few of them. I got one that looks like Batman. I have this cool metallic cube that spins as well, and this one that doesn't work on anything but a flat surface, but if you spin it, it looks like a spiral swirling around, and that'll just sort of clear my head and wander around. So I think that's going to make videos nicer as well. It's not, I'm not averse to the idea of something like that, but that's a fully standalone up and down thing, and I need more desk space than that because I have 3 monitors that are ginormous, and then 3 laptops on the desk alone. That desk isn't big enough for that. So for something like that, I'd need one of those ones that sits on top of the desk that can go up or down. Conceivably, I might stream from there sometimes too, but that requires a network cable to be strung from the network thing behind me to whatever machine I'm streaming with to make sure that there's enough upstream bandwidth. So the barrier to entry there is not wanting to have to string Cat5 around or get under the desk and disconnect something, because I think all the ports on that switch are used right now. Server address. This is the only place the server address is used. So we can do the same thing. Ag! What did I do? Okay, let's put those back. And then come back up to server address. And we're going to go ahead and just delete all of this stuff flat out. Delete, I say. And then jump down to here and paste it in, because this is just going to be something like this, and this is going to be SN setting for a particular setting and SN setting for a particular setting. And this is no longer, this is Streamport now. So I can do a little bit of that, and I can do a little bit of that in place of this stuff. So that's those things kind of being done there. So now this is only used in setting up the group membership for broadcasting, and this is used for binding, and this is used in one place as well. And those are all in here, right? That is, one of those is in here. There's that, there's the group, there's the port. So all 3 of those options can now come down here. We can do the thing where, well, we leave that one, I guess. Delete all these. And then, so those are the only 2 of those things. Oops. Stop it. Yeah, I was pushing the wrong key there. Let's sort of. That one's easier. Okay. Oh shoot, I didn't add an option for that one. Crap. Set the multicast discovery TTL. This is an setting that you probably don't need to change. Okay. If you don't know what TTL is, you don't need to change this setting. Okay. So this would be SN setting for discovery TTL, like so. And that means there's no more places where that is. Now there's one multicast. Oh, I'm pushing shift. No wonder that's not working. Cripeny. It's only those two and those two. Beauty. So discovery port is going to be this one. And now there's only one place that is, so we can delete it. And multicast group is going to be this one. So SN setting, discovery group, and now that's nowhere. So we can take all of those things out, and we can find this thing and add it in as a value, like so. So in the world of the purely theoretical, and that looks really bright now as a result of all of that sort of thing, that seems to be doing the business that we are interested in. We still successfully connected to those other systems. I need a key binding to pop that panel up. Now that this is working, I can demonstrate the other thing. Notice this window has this panel already. If I create a new window, look in the right place. This one also has a SubliNet panel, and it has the exact same text in it that that one has. Because it seemed to me if you're going to track network stuff, you want it to be in all windows. Otherwise, you have to try to track down the place where you last did a thing. That doesn't seem necessarily cool. So we're accepting connections from both of those two systems on otherwise random ports, but that's okay. I believe that is all to the good. So let's just do one more little bit of thing here. Let's say package dev menu, new main menu file, like so. And that seems like it's probably good. We don't have key bindings yet, but there might be. Might there be? You can put comments in these things, right? Let's save this as main.sublime menu in SubliNet resources. And we can always do that thing I like to do where I shuffle these around a little bit later. But now that that's in place, Readme works. Wrong place. And oh, right. Maybe we use the correct thing for that. Good. And yeah, close without saving. We don't care about that. And we are going to, oh, actually, the first thing we're going to do is detect indentation so that it thinks it's 2. And then we're going to convert the indentation to tabs. And then we're going to set the tab size to 4. No, I guess I like 2 for that. All right, undo that. What I don't like about it is the way that it stacks things up, but I can fix that later, I guess. So for now, we'll just comment. Comment that out because we don't have any key bindings right now, so we don't really need to have that in the thing there. We just need those 2, and then we'll say new commands file short. Nope. Boop, boop. That one. There's still a problem with, I gotta write a bug report for that particular operation. This is going to be resources. This one's going to be commented out. We save it as sublinet.sublime commands in resources. And then we can open the README. Whoops. Oh, the other one is preferences. That's weird. Preferences, SubliNet. SubliNet. Don't know if it's just me. Don't think that should be the case. I guess because of the colon I threw on there. We just need to add a. Huh. Yeah. Anyway, that's going to be the README. Subl-prefs. Boop. There's the preferences file. Close without saving. No. So we have that stuff nicely set up for us now. So we can throw that in. The reason for doing all of that was the idea of actually, yeah, I think we could actually test this. Okay, so let's do this. We'll open this and we'll say we want to leave the IP address and the discovery port the same, but for the stream port, let's change this to port 4504 because why not? Save that, close the file, quit. And if I restart this, we're connecting to 70. Only one of those did something. That's interesting. If I was to copy this, the one that is connected is not the Windows machine. I think it's this one over here. Let's see. Let's do that again. Yeah. So of course it's connected to the Mac, but it's not connected to that Windows system over there. But if I was to open the panel on this computer, where's my split? There's a lot of stuff in here. Oh. It thinks it's connecting to something it can't possibly connect to. So there may or may not be particular issues related to that. Okay, let's try that one more time. Open the SubliNet panel and scroll that all the way to the bottom. This has been running for quite some time. This one's still, oh, this one's trying to connect to that machine as well. The weird thing is that it's deciding to do that now. This doesn't say, yeah, this just says it's accepting. So there's not really a good log for that currently, I guess. Unless it's specifically noted in there. It's connecting to that system. The other side, of course, doesn't need to connect to us. One of those potentially weird issues. We might need a little bit more stuff before we officially submit it. Did I undo one of the changes in this transport file? So we added in that, we removed those things. That is talking to discovery TTL. That's still an empty string, and discovery port. That is discovery group. Is discovery group the correct thing? I assume so. I assume I copied it in there. Server address is now stream IP and stream port. That's still adder 0. I think I need to sync these changes to that machine so I can test it in multiple ways. So let's let's see, we'll stage and that and that and that and that. I can always split these out later. And we want that, that, that. I guess I could create a branch for this, right? And then cherry pick commits out later. Better way to go, probably. Create branch. Test some networking changes, let's say, and we'll push network tweaks to origin. Setting upstream now. This also requires restarting things, which is an unfortunate turn of events. So hang on here. We're going to lean over to this window. Unfortunately, you can't see this particular one, but we need to go to the packages folder and go to SubliNet and git fetch, and then git checkout network dash tweaks, exit, and then we're going to have to quit Sublime, which does not use the key that one might think. I don't think. Thinking about it. Here we go. Now we're just going to be, oh, look at that. That actually worked. Okay. It looks like it successfully did something. Probably should have fiddled with things. So an error occurred while trying to upgrade SAS. Okay. I'm pretty sure I don't care about that at the time being. So now if I go over to this system and copy some stuff, say for example, these two lines. Did it actually do anything over here? I don't think so. I think because it's still doing the wrong thing, right? So yeah, what we want to do, we need to update the other system too. So we'll do this. Go to the package folder, go away, SubliNet. If this is teaching us anything, it's that the ability to stop that panel from popping up like that, it needs to be configurable. And there's totally a README item for that. It just so happens that we yammered on about stuff so long we never really got that far. Git fetch, git checkout network tweaks. Okay, so that's all good. So I'm going to quit Sublime over here and fire it up again. And over on this system, I need to say IP config and say, oh my gosh, that's not it. 172.36.140. Okay, so we're gonna go for preferences. I apologize, I can't show this part on the stream, and we need to configure SubliNet settings so that the stream IP is 172.36.140. Now over here, okay, I gotta quit Sublime on this machine so that it'll see the new setting and then restart it. Hopefully that may have done something. Let's see, we'll bring it over here. Open the panel and it's connecting. That really seems like Let's quit this one entirely and restart it fresh because that panel is mucho de long. Somehow it's choosing. Oh, I just thought of something. Okay. That all seems to be okay. It's trying to connect to that thing. So what if we found that 70 is that one? Let's do this. We can see it logging discovery messages. 69 is us. We can see that there. That's host name Dart. Right there. And we look discovery from. Now it's advertising the wrong IP. Right. Haha, I just remembered the other part of this change that is necessary. We need to do a little something like this. And the argument is self-user password. So if we find the introduction message, username, password, and then SN setting for thing whose name I don't remember, stream IP. We want to broadcast the stream IP as the thing that we're listening on because that's the thing that we're actually connecting to. So when we create the message that we transmit out, there's another one of those as well. Oh, it's constructed in the init method. That's right. Oh, I thought. Was it the only place where there's one of those? That can't be right. There we go. So the thing that we broadcast is that we are listening on whatever the stream IP is. And technically, I guess we need to actually throw the port in there too, don't we? Stream port, like so. So when we initialize ourselves, this is the message that we're broadcasting out that says who we are. There's a password in there because it's something that was used in the remote build system, but the idea is that there would be a token in there, and that basically just something that if you had multiple copies of Sublime, maybe you want some of them to talk to some and not others, you could have a little token in there that sets up a little mini network sort of thing so that it would only try to connect to things that have the same thing. We could also add credentials in there, but we broadcast out that this is the port we're listening on, and this is the port. This is the IP we're listening on, and this is the port we're listening on. When we actually create the server socket, we listen on that IP and that port. When we connect, we send a message to the other side to introduce ourselves. This could theoretically be that discovery message. I think that might be why I said it this way. So let's just go ahead and say that this is self.broadcast message. So we broadcast out who it is that we are. When we receive a broadcast, which is the thing that's logging up here, the first thing we see is the address as the network subsystem knows it, and the next thing we see is the actual message itself. So this message is coming from IP address 1.40 on this subnet, but this is where it's actually doing some stuff. So the other change we can put back is this one. I thought this actually was message.ip is the place that we're going. Oh, you know what? I may have also subverted a little bit of my code here. So let's go ahead and if we just double check what we did here, we're actually broadcasting that we are on a particular IP and port when we go. For now, well, I guess we stage that hunk. We don't stage that hunk. We look for a connection on the IP in the message because that's what we're going to try to connect to. And then after we connect, we send the other side of the connection the introduction message that it would have known about if it had received our message. The idea is no matter what way that goes, the other side gets to know about it. So let's go ahead and amend the previous commit. Now we'll probably have diverged because we're unhappy in that regard, but we can push network takes to origin force with lease, and then I got to do some magic over here again. So let's see. Wait for the terminal to open, package, and then cd SubliNet, git fetch, git reset, -- hard, origin / network dash tweaks. And then we will quit. And we'll do the same thing over here, but we can actually show you that one, so that's a little bit more interesting. And we log in, go to the packages folder, go to SubliNet, git fetch, origin. That was weird. Okay. And then I can quit over here, and we will also quit this one and start it before we start any others, and we can track what it is that we're doing, I think. So it is seeing its own discovery messages now. So it's remember, this is what the network, where the network actually received it from. And this is the message we are transmitting that says we are this user. It doesn't display the password because that would be a security hole. That we are listening on port on this IP address on port 4504, and we are host dart.thedragonland.net on Linux running protocol version 1. And we just see that once every 30 seconds. Now I'm going to fire up Sublime on the Mac, and it immediately says connecting to and connected, which is exactly what we would like to see here. And if we look in the, whoops, that's not the console. We look in the console, now we're seeing 2 discovery messages. We can see this one they're both being received on the multicast port, but TMAC is broadcasting that it's listening on port 4377 and not on port 4504. Looks good. This says we are connecting and connected. Now, if we're connecting, we're initiating the connection out. So that port might not be displaying the right thing because, no, sorry, this one is connecting to that one. That one is broadcasting what we would expect, right? Now, okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to quit this. The idea is when I restart this one, it immediately sends a broadcast out. That one over there notices the broadcast, tries to connect, and connects back. In theory, it works, even though the port is different. And then we can test some stuff out. So here we go. So we are accepting a connection from that computer, and it says it is connected. Now, if I came over to this computer and look, and perhaps if I was to actually look in the panel, I'm going to copy all of the text from this machine. We can see it updated that, so it's actually connected. And this is what the panel for the Mac looks like. This was when we connected to it. Then we close this down. Then when we started on this machine here, on the Linux machine, we broadcasted that we were listening on this port, and that one connected to us and successfully made the connection. So that is doing exactly what we want. We're using those configuration options the way that we want. So now the real test here is if I start Sublime on this system, it says it's connecting to and connected. So what we're going to see here now is if I look in the console here and turn that off, the discovery message from Van Term was received on this port, but it's broadcasting that this is the IP address and port that it should connect on. Notice it's not that 10 one anymore, because over on that machine, and I can actually even test this now, if I swap the mouse over to that machine, copy this text, I copied 36 characters, we come back over here, and this is what the settings on that machine looks like. I specifically told it we're listening on this IP address. So this is where it's got its listen socket set up. This is what it broadcasts out. Our end tries to connect to it on that IP address, and everything works exactly the way that we want. So from that perspective, that change is working, and we are at our stream limit. But let's see what we have here, because allow for configuration of what network interface to use. Done. Include configuration for what multicast group and port to broadcast the discovery messages on. Yep, that works. Well, I guess we never really tested that, did we? It has to be the same for everybody or it won't work. So, but we set the configuration option, so that'll work. Allow for return connections to happen on a separately configured port from the discovery broadcast if desired. This should be technically possible now, but it requires the introduction message to include a different port. That's the thing we just did, so that's done. Logging into the output panel should be less spoopy. Yes, it should. Let's see if we can cram one more thing in here. Now, what I'm actually going to do here very quickly is stage that and discard that, and then amend the previous commit. I'll go back and fix that and split it apart after the stream is over, because nobody needs to see that business. And then we'll do the same thing where we push to origin with least to fix the divergence. And I have my own Git repository set up on a machine local in my house, and then I use that to share between all of my local machines, and then I push it up to GitHub when I'm ready to share. So you never have to worry about this whole force push with least thing if you're taking the code off of GitHub. Once I put it there, that's all she wrote. The idea here is what? Let's close a bunch of files here because we're in a little bit of overload. I had a lot of things open when I was working on them. Close that down, go like this. First, let's look at introduction. The introduction message is something that we transmit from us out to on the multicast port to let other people know we exist. Where we broadcast our IP address, we broadcast our port, and we broadcast our host name. And we saw that down in here. We can see it here. It's still running the older version of the code. This is the fully qualified host name of these machines as they come out. This one is broadcasting that it's on my work network. This one's broadcasting it's on my home network. And for some reason, the Mac decided .local was the domain that it should use, and I didn't care enough to fix it. But you'll note that when we look in here, these use IP addresses for messages that are coming out. And what it should actually be using is a host name. Now, there's this idea of a connection object that is I never really discussed this particular thing, did I? A connection here represents a TCP socket. It has an actual socket itself. It has there's a network connection manager that manages the list of connections, as the name suggests. It's basically just a glorified list of things. This connection knows what host it thinks it's connected to and what port it thinks it's connected to. This is for whether or not this connection was accepted because we're a server socket and the connection was established by someone connecting to us versus us connecting out to someone else. Accepted would be false in that case. That's the default. And callback is a function that gets called so that the stuff in the panel can appear. And it's currently implemented. Yeah, so this idea of this connection has a couple of queues in it. And what we're doing when we do this, and actually we can see that here in the network code. Let's trace this. Oh, that's called transport now. The network thread has a manager. So we come down to discovery, right? So when we receive a discovery message, we don't try to do anything if it's us that's broadcasting it because we don't need to connect to ourselves. We're already connected to our own thing. The protocol version mismatches. If we decide in the future that the way we're transmitting messages needs to change, we change the number. That means this one talks in a way that other things won't talk to. It's automatically going to not try to talk to things that it doesn't not going to understand. It looks to see if it already has a connection on a particular IP address. And if it does, then it doesn't need to do anything. Otherwise, it calls connect on the IP address and port from the discovery message because that's what the other side broadcasted that it was listening on. That calls this with, well, it doesn't call this directly. The manager calls this with a socket and this as the host and this as the port. Theoretically, this could actually use the host name that this broadcasts, but that might not relate to the IP address. That's why it's using that distinctly. So one thing we could do here is when we make a connection out, we could actually tag this with the host name it represents, but also its IP address, which would require us to change all instances of host here with the text IP instead, because that's what we're actually using in this implementation. Remember, this code came from somewhere else. So that's host, host. IP address is self.ip. Send error, we're going to message the IP address. IP, that's all the things. We say IP like this. So now that is 100% cleared up, right? Everything should still work exactly the same because all the stuff is internal in here. I guess, technically speaking, we need to actually log the connection in order to see that happening. Where does the connection get logged? Network handler. Connection state. Log F connection, let's say. Okay, so we're going to quit that, restart. Da-da-da. Oh, I broke that real good. Oh, right. My bad. The connection manager understands that stuff too. Find connection, IP address, IP, 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 IP. Connect to IP, provided IP, open connection to that IP. Open connection is going to be something that we just saw a second ago. Add connection to an IP. This is that particular argument. Open connection, host IP, protected IP. Connect to that IP address, make a connection to that IP. That is a lot of the weirdest term in the world. Still no? Something else using it too, huh? Right. Of course it's using it in here. I just looked at this a second ago. Connection.host, connection.host, IP. Except that that's not really what we want. We want it to actually be host in a minute. So let's save that and quit. 10th time's the charm. Right, so everything is back to working the way we might expect, and we can see it saying here, this is a connection to this IP address and this port socket in out. This is the actual socket file descriptor number because sockets are just files. This is how many messages are queued for going out, which is none. This is how many messages are waiting for us to do something with them because they've come in, and that is none. In fact, this is the receive queue, and if you were looking earlier in the stream, this actually isn't connected to anything anymore. Initially, the idea is that this could queue up messages and then you could fetch them out when you need them. But now we're using this event handler system where you register that you want to know when various network events are happening, and then it calls you, and one of those is you got a message. So it can't keep these in a queue, or if more than one person was to register one of these things, only one of them would be able to get the message. Okay, so now we can do a little bit of extra work here to say the idea is we want this to have the idea of a host name. So we might say self.hostname equals IP, like this, okay? Just for the purposes of that, in our representation, we could throw a little bit of this in. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5, and 6 is self.hostname. So if we were to quit that and restart, the IP address and the port should be the same. So that is connected up, and we can see that it's thinking that the host name is the IP address, so all is good, right? Now, when we call connect, we get the connection back. So if we were to look in transport at the place where we do this, we can say con.hostname is equal to message.hostname. So whenever we connect out to somebody because we have received a discovery message from them, we can set the host name on that connection directly to the one that was from the broadcast. Similarly, handle incoming peer happens when we accept a connection. And in that case, no, we can't do that here because we don't know yet. Pardon me. That requires something in here. We want def introduction message for self on this connection. This is a message that was provided. And we can say connection.hostname equals message.hostname. And we're going to need a couple of things here. Let's duplicate this. Take that out, and then say introduction message like this. And then this is crude. This is the last thing I worked on before I released this. If the message ID of this is the same as the introduction message dot message ID, then return self dot introduction message for connection and message like this. So when we receive a message, if it's an introduction message, call this method with it, and it will set the host name in the connection to the one that the thing actually introduced itself as. So if I click this, in theory, we see it saying accepting and connected, and hopefully we receive some sort of event. I guess I could do something like this. Did I use the wrong name for that? No. Oh, it only happens for connections. That's why that would make sense. Let's do it here. Brackets and then connection dot hostname. We'll do that. And then we'll be able to see it directly in the panel if it works. Okay, so there we go. Now, if I copy this text, vanterm.ssnc.global updated the clipboard, which is perfect. And if I copy over here, it's this key. Oops, is that key? No, it's not that key at all. It's this key. Then tmac.local updated the clipboard. So this could be this instead. Don't need that. So let us restart that and see what we get. So it's accepting a connection from that IP. Actually, is it worth, we could make the accepting message no. No, we couldn't. Not the accepting message. Someone's talking to us, we don't know who it is. Only when we're connecting out could we say exactly who we are connecting to. But if I copy the text over here, tmac.local updated the clipboard, and if I do it over here, vanterm.ssnc.global updated the clipboard. So that's the other change that I wanted to make for this, and that's pretty good, I think. Yeah, we don't need that window anymore. We can just go ahead and get rid of that bad boy. Boop. The font on that monitor looks so much smaller than the one here. We're going to open the Readme. I can't remember if this was replacing me. Okay, so use proper host names as garnered from introduction messages in the output panel instead of IP addresses. Gotcha. Configure whether the output panel opens automatically or not when output is logged to it. And I need to think on that a bit because one of the things I think I wanted to pop up, but not as frequently as it was. So maybe it doesn't pop up when the clipboard does, or maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't pop up for connections. Maybe it only pops up for failures, something along those lines. Need to think about exactly how we want that to work. It could also maybe not, it's configurable to always pop up, but then you tell it not to. It also automatically closes after a set period of time. which works. Configure a time limit to automatically close the output panel. That's something that we could do easily right now, but we're not going to because it's the end of the thing. And implement a proper token ring. This is the thing I was mentioning before. The introduction message as it's currently defined is actually taking a username and a password because it's supposed to authenticate with the remote end. That's not what's happening right now. So the idea was some combination of the username and the password would be used to allow two systems or multiple systems to know that there's another instance they want to talk to. So, for example, if I'm working in Sublime and my wife is working in Sublime and we both have this package running on our specific things, maybe we don't want our clipboard to be shared. So we would each have a different token, like, for example, a username or something along those lines, to that we have configured in our own personal settings. And then even though we'll see each other's discovery, we won't try to talk because the other person's token doesn't match ours. And then we could also use the password as well if you wanted to have sort of an extra level of verification. But I don't know how much sense that actually makes. We did go a little over here, but I think that's probably cool because we did a little bit of rambling. Plus, it's been a while and I've really missed streaming. So I think that is what we're going to call it. I'm going to check this in and then split those commits up. And if you follow the GitHub repository for this, you'll probably see them change not too long from now, as a matter of fact. Hopefully, I might do that tomorrow, if not tonight, because I have been trying to get to bed a little bit early. The whole root canal tooth, gums hurt, throbbing, can't even scratch my nose or blow my nose without there being a pain from touching right there. Really, stopped me from sleeping for a bit too. It's been noticed on the Discord that I've been very active as of late. Generally, I am pretty active, and it was a long weekend, but also I was staying up a lot later than I normally would a lot of the time as a result of that. But I think that is where we're going to call it. Let's see how well this works, because during testing earlier, it was being a gigantic butt. And yeah, okay, it seems to have fixed itself. If you have been watching, thank you so much. We're streaming next week. I mean, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. I always say that, but all my dental issues should theoretically be fixed. I need more stuff done, but I reach the end of the insurance money the insurance will pay before I reach the end of the year. So everything else is sort of on hiatus until next year. So if I do have to dismiss another stream because yet another thing went wrong in my mouth, which is apparently out of warranty, then know that you might be unhappy that I'm not here on the stream, but I'm unhappy for that reason and some other ones as well. And I'm not sure what we'll work on in that stream. I do need to start cycling back around to working on override audit. It seems like we might be getting close to maybe a public release of Sublime Text 4. It sounds like there's some Will has said some stuff that makes me think anyway that maybe he's working on dependencies now. And I don't think Sublime 4 dev version will release until dependencies work in packages that are using the new plugin host. I don't think he would necessarily release that in that state. That's my thought anyway. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily matter, but you don't want to have a development version out where if someone wants to create a package, it can't have a dependency. It's not a great way to go. So fingers crossed on that, and that means maybe there's a release coming soon. So I should probably work on getting override, making sure rather that override audit runs in the new plugin host where possible. Which I think should probably go well. I think I was playing with it for a while, and there was one thing that wasn't working, and I realized after the fact that I have some plugins in my user folder that are referencing code in it. So there may have been some weird interplay there, something to look into. Anyway, but in any case, that's enough rambling. Hopefully you found the stream entertaining and informative. And remember to use the buttons down below, thumb subscribe and share, ring the bell notification icon. When I go live, you will know. And I believe because these streams are scheduled, YouTube will also tell you when I'm about to go live, like a half an hour ahead of time. I also have another channel. We do weekly videos over there. And the last one was Introduction to Event Handlers. Coming up on Monday, a new Sublime Text tutorial video. You're not going to want to miss out on that, so make sure to subscribe to that one as well. And until a video drops or a live stream occurs, this is OdatNurd, traditionally asking you to please have a sublime day.